In a Seattle residential neighborhood where autumn winds caressed her cheeks, Rachel Harrison was desperately trying to adapt to her new life. Married life was vastly different from what she had imagined. Everything had become complicated with the presence of 5-year-old Emma, her stepdaughter. Rachel had worked for years as a medical clerk at the local general hospital. Though she had a regular routine and stable income, she hadn't been blessed in love, and after a doctor told her it would be difficult to have children, her dreams of marriage had faded. Her life changed last spring. She met Michael Harrison, a pharmaceutical company sales manager, during a business meeting at the hospital. With his calm demeanor and warm smile, he captured Rachel's heart in an instant. When she learned that Michael was a single man who had recently lost his wife to illness and was raising a young daughter alone, Rachel naturally wanted to support him. Their courtship was brief. Michael said, "Emma needs a mother," and Rachel felt that, even though I can't have children, I might be able to become her mother. The wedding was held in a small church with only family members present. Emma looked adorable in her white dress, walking down the aisle carrying a bouquet. 3 months after the marriage and 2 months since she began living with Emma, Rachel couldn't hide her confusion. Emma was an angel-like little girl with beautiful blonde hair and large blue eyes, but she always seemed to keep her distance from Rachel. "Good morning, Emma," Rachel called out cheerfully at the breakfast table. Emma only replied with a small, "Good morning," and wouldn't make eye contact. She didn't touch the pancakes Rachel had made, only sipping a little orange juice. "Emma, eat a little more," Michael said, looking up from his newspaper. However, his voice contained a harshness that made Emma shrink even further. "It's okay, Emma. You don't have to force yourself," Rachel smiled gently, but Emma shook her head and left her seat. Michael sighed. "I'm sorry, Rachel." Emma still hasn't gotten used to the change in environment. "She was accustomed to the food my previous wife made, so she might be confused by the new flavors." Michael didn't like to talk much about his former wife. Other than explaining that she died suddenly from illness, he wouldn't share any details. Rachel thought it wouldn't be good to bring up painful memories, so she didn't probe deeper. "I wonder if my cooking doesn't suit her taste," Rachel became anxious. While working her medical clerk job, she had bought cookbooks and researched menus that children might enjoy. However, Emma's reaction seemed to grow colder with each passing day. "Time will solve it," Michael placed his hand on Rachel's shoulder before leaving for work. "Emma will come to accept you. You're very kind, and you'll surely make a good mother." Though Rachel was encouraged by those words, she harbored anxiety deep in her heart. When she saw Emma's small hands trembling, when she noticed what seemed like fear shadowing her eyes, she felt an indescribable uneasiness. In the evening, after returning from work, Rachel went to pick up Emma from daycare. She felt slightly relieved seeing Emma playing happily with other children. However, the moment Emma spotted Rachel, her expression clouded. "What did you play today?" Rachel tried to make conversation in the car, but Emma just stared out the window. That night too, Emma barely touched her dinner. The child-friendly spaghetti Rachel had made, the small salad, the homemade cookies, everything remained untouched. "Emma, are you feeling sick somewhere?" Rachel knelt down to Emma's eye level, worried. Emma shook her head. "Sorry, Mama. I'm not hungry." Hearing those words made Rachel's chest tighten. She was happy that Emma called her Mama, but at the same time, she couldn't shake the feeling that the child was enduring something. Perhaps she was still thinking about her deceased mother and couldn't accept a new mother. Rachel wanted to open Emma's heart, even if it took time. Emma's food refusal became more serious with each passing day. Rachel, who initially thought it was just pickiness, gradually became more worried. Days continued when Emma wouldn't take a single bite of breakfast pancakes, and the daycare reported that she left most of her lunch untouched. "Emma, you left your lunch again today," the daycare teacher spoke to Rachel. "Does she have any food she particularly dislikes?" Rachel was puzzled. "I haven't heard of any specific dislikes. She doesn't want to eat much at home either. The environment has just changed for her. I'm sure time will solve it, the teacher smiled kindly, but Rachel's anxiety only increased. That night, Rachel consulted Michael about Emma's condition. She hasn't eaten properly for over a week now. She'll make herself sick at this rate. Michael remained seated on the sofa, not taking his eyes off the television. You're being too neurotic, Rachel. Children are like that. When she gets hungry, she'll naturally start eating. But, Michael, Rachel was about to raise her voice when she heard Emma's small footsteps from the bedroom and held her tongue. Mama, I want some water. Emma appeared in the living room wearing her pajamas. Rachel quickly stood up and poured mineral water into a glass from the refrigerator. Emma's hands trembled slightly as she took the glass, but Michael didn't seem to notice. The next day, Rachel left work early and took Emma to a pediatrician. While other children ran around energetically in the waiting room, Emma sat quietly on her mother's lap. Emma, does anything hurt? A young female doctor asked gently. Emma only shook her head and wouldn't speak. The examination revealed no physical abnormalities. Her weight is slightly below average, but it's not a serious condition, the doctor explained. It might be stress from adapting to a new environment. Children can have complex emotions about relationships with stepmothers too. But I love her, Rachel pleaded desperately. I think of her as precious as my own daughter. I think that comes through. The doctor placed her hand on Rachel's shoulder. But a mother's death is a major trauma for a child. There might be unconscious resistance to accepting a new mother. If you take time to gradually build a trusting relationship, it will be fine. When they returned home, Michael was already there. What did the doctor say? No physical problems. It's stress from the change in environment, Rachel reported. Michael looked relieved. That's good then. You were worrying too much after all. However, that night Emma refused dinner again. The chicken rice Rachel had made with love, the corn soup that seemed like something Emma would like, everything remained untouched. Emma, please try just one bite, Rachel pleaded, and Emma shook her head with tears in her eyes. Sorry, Mama. I'm really not hungry. At that moment, Michael suddenly raised his voice. Enough, Emma. Rachel made this especially for you. Emma clung to her chair in fear. Rachel was also startled by Michael's shouting. It was the first time she had seen Michael get so violently angry since their marriage. Michael, calm down, Rachel placed her hand on his arm. Shouting will only make it harder for her to eat. Michael took a deep breath and lowered his tone. Sorry. But it's not good to waste Rachel's cooking. Afterwards, Michael sat Emma on his lap and spoke to her. Emma, don't you want to eat because it's different from Daddy's cooking? Emma nodded slightly. Is Mama's cooking different? When Michael asked, Emma nodded again. Rachel's chest ached. Can you tell me what kind of food you'd like? I'll make anything. However, Emma didn't answer. She just buried her face in Michael's chest and sobbed quietly. From the next day, Rachel desperately began researching cooking. She borrowed children's cookbooks from the library and searched for various recipes on the internet. When she asked Michael about his former wife's specialty dishes, she only got vague answers like, I don't remember, or, it was ordinary home cooking. Rachel spent time carefully selecting ingredients at the supermarket and tried different menus every day. Hamburgers that children would like, homemade pizza, pasta, omelette rice. She made dish after dish that looked cute and was nutritionally balanced. However, Emma's reaction didn't change. No matter how delicious the food looked, Emma would say, sorry, Mama, and refuse to eat. A week later, Rachel was exhausted. Days of getting up early to make lunch boxes and trying new recipes after returning from work. Still, Emma never ate what she made. Maybe my cooking really is terrible, Rachel consulted her workplace colleague. That's not true, her colleague Sarah encouraged her. The cookies you brought the other day were very delicious. I'm sure time will solve it. However, time didn't bring a solution. Rather, Emma's condition got even worse. Her complexion became pale, and she became even more silent than before. The daycare teacher also contacted them with concern, saying, "She seems to lack energy lately." One night, Rachel was alone in the kitchen crying. Today too, Emma hadn't taken a single bite of dinner. The meatloaf made with love, the mashed potatoes that seemed like something she'd like, everything had gone to waste. What's wrong? Rachel asked herself. What's bad about me? Michael came to the kitchen and gently patted Rachel's back. Don't cry, Rachel. But, Michael, Rachel turned around. I don't know what to do. Even though I make new dishes every day, Emma won't eat anything. I'm so worried about her at this rate. Michael sighed. Rachel, you're trying more than enough. But Emma isn't used to your cooking. It's completely different from my previous wife's cooking. How is it different? Tell me, Rachel pleaded desperately. What kind of cooking did your former wife make? Michael thought for a moment before answering. It was simple cooking. She didn't make anything too elaborate. Emma is used to those kinds of flavors. Then I'll try making it simpler, Rachel found hope. Starting tomorrow, I'll try making more rustic dishes. However, the simple salt rice balls and miso soup she made the next day, Emma didn't eat either. The plain udon the day after that, and the bread and milk the day after that, all had the same result. Emma continued saying, Sorry, Mama. I'm not hungry. And seeing Emma repeat those words every night, Rachel's heart was gradually breaking. After 2 weeks had passed, Michael's attitude also began to change. Rachel, isn't there a problem with your cooking? He said suddenly one night. Emma never refused to eat like this before. Those words pierced deep into Rachel's heart. I'm doing my best in my own way. But you're not getting results, Michael's voice was cold. Can't you make cooking more like my previous wife's? But you don't tell me about your former wife's cooking, Rachel's voice became tearful. What kind of seasonings she liked, what ingredients she used, you don't tell me anything. Michael fell silent. Then, after a while, he said, It's painful to remember. But for Emma's sake, it can't be helped. That night, Rachel pondered alone. Was her cooking really that bad? Or was Emma still thinking about her deceased mother and unable to accept a new mother's cooking? Either way, she was worried about Emma's health at this rate. Michael left for a 3-day business trip on Friday morning. He was scheduled to visit regional branches of the pharmaceutical company and wouldn't return until Monday night. Rachel was secretly relieved. Michael had been in a bad mood lately and often blamed Rachel for Emma's eating problems. Take care, Rachel saw Michael off at the front door. He pulled his suitcase along and got in the car without looking back. Emma watched her father's car from the window, but when the car disappeared from view, she showed what seemed like a relieved expression. Rachel noticed this change but didn't have time to think deeply about it. Today was the first weekend in a long time that she could spend alone with Emma. Emma, what would you like to do today? Rachel asked brightly. Emma thought for a moment, then answered in a small voice, I want to go to the park. It was the first time since the marriage that Emma had expressed a wish of her own. Rachel's heart leaped. Of course. I'll make a lunch too, and we'll have a picnic. In the morning, they spent time at the nearby park. Emma showed a smile for the first time in a long while, riding the swings and playing on the slide. She even took a little bite of the sandwiches Rachel had made. Is it good? Rachel asked, and Emma nodded slightly. I like Mama's sandwiches. Hearing those words, Rachel almost cried. It was the first time in weeks she had heard Emma say something was good. That evening, after returning home, Emma's demeanor was clearly different. She was more active than usual and wanted to help Rachel. Even while preparing dinner, she brought a small chair and stood next to Rachel in the kitchen. "Emma will help too." "Thank you. Could you wash these vegetables for me?" Emma diligently washed the tomatoes and lettuce. Watching her, Rachel felt happy. This might be what real parent-child time is like, she thought. However, when dinner time came, Emma's expression clouded again. She stared at the food Rachel had plated, her hand holding the fork trembling. "Emma, are you okay?" Rachel became worried. Emma shook her head. "Sorry, Mama. I'm not hungry after all." "But you ate the sandwiches at the park," Rachel was confused. "Is something different?" Emma didn't answer. She just looked at Rachel with tears in her eyes. In those eyes was a complex emotion, as if she wanted to say something but couldn't. That night, after putting Emma to bed, Rachel sat alone in the living room. Today she had finally spent enjoyable time with Emma, but in the end, dinner was refused again. Why did Emma seem better when Michael wasn't around? After 10 p.m., she heard small footsteps from the bedroom. Emma appeared in the living room in her pajamas. "Mama," Emma's voice was trembling. "What's wrong, Emma? Can't you sleep?" Rachel quickly stood up. Emma shook her head. Then she slowly walked toward Rachel. At that moment, Rachel noticed that Emma's condition was completely different from usual. Emma's body was trembling slightly, her face was pale, as if she was frightened of something. "Mama," Emma called again. "I can only talk when Daddy isn't watching." Rachel's heart began beating rapidly. "What do you want to talk about?" Emma looked around, confirmed that Michael really wasn't there, then approached Rachel. She grabbed Rachel's clothes with her small hands. "Mama, there's something I have to tell you." Rachel knelt down to Emma's eye level. "You can talk about anything. You don't have to be afraid." Large tears spilled from Emma's eyes. The previous mama also stopped eating food. And then. Emma's voice trembled and she couldn't continue. Rachel gently rubbed Emma's back. "Take your time. Talk at your own pace." After a while, Emma opened her mouth as if she had made up her mind. The previous mama ate food at first too. But gradually she stopped eating. Daddy got angry. He said, "Why won't you eat?" Rachel's blood froze. Then, Daddy started mixing white powder into the previous mama's food. Emma saw it. Daddy said it was medicine, but... Medicine? Rachel's voice was shaking. Emma nodded. After that, the previous mama stopped eating even more and was always sleepy. And then. Emma choked on her words. Rachel prepared herself mentally and asked, "And then what happened?" "The previous mama died," Emma's voice was trembling. "Daddy said she died from illness, but Emma knows." After Daddy mixed the white powder, the previous mama became strange. Rachel's world collapsed in an instant. Michael's former wife didn't die from illness. He had been mixing some kind of drug into her food. "Emma," Rachel asked in a trembling voice, "so you're afraid to eat my cooking?" Emma nodded vigorously. "I'm scared the new mama will become the same way. Daddy might mix white powder into the new mama's food too. So Emma doesn't eat food. I want to protect the new mama." Rachel was stunned. Emma wasn't rejecting her. She was trying to protect her. A 5-year-old girl had been desperately refusing food to protect her stepmother. "Emma, you were trying to protect me?" Emma nodded while crying. "But I'm tired now. I want the new mama to know the truth. Daddy is a bad person." Rachel hugged the trembling Emma. "Emma, thank you for telling me. You're truly a brave child. But if Daddy finds out, he'll get angry." Emma trembled with fear. "Daddy is very scary. He always yelled at the previous mama too." All the puzzle pieces connected in Rachel's mind. Michael's sudden anger, his reluctance to talk about his former wife in detail, Emma's fear, and the reason for her food refusal. Everything pointed to one horrifying truth. "Emma, you're safe. I'll protect you." Rachel stood up. "I'm going to make a phone call." "To who?" Emma asked anxiously. "The police," Rachel answered without hesitation. "We have to tell them everything before Daddy comes back." A light of hope appeared in Emma's eyes. "Really? Will the new mama believe me?" "Of course. You're not lying. And what you did was very brave." Rachel reached for the phone. Her hand was trembling, but her mind was made up. From the moment she heard Emma's confession, it was clear what needed to be done. Michael was a dangerous man. And before he returned on Monday, everything had to be revealed. Emma was beside her mother, showing a relieved expression for the first time. The police arrived 40 minutes after Rachel's call. Despite it being late at night, 2 detectives responded quickly. There was Detective Johnson, an older man, and Detective Rodriguez, a young woman. "Mrs. Harrison, please calmly explain the situation to us," Detective Johnson asked in a gentle tone. Rachel began explaining in a trembling voice while holding Emma on her lap. "My stepdaughter Emma wants to testify about the death of my husband's former wife. I was told that his former wife died from illness, but actually my husband was mixing drugs into her food." Detective Rodriguez knelt down to Emma's eye level. "Emma, you don't have to be afraid. Can you tell us what you saw?" Emma hesitated at first, but with Rachel's encouragement, she gathered her courage again. "Daddy put white powder in the previous mama's food. Every day. The previous mama gradually became sleepy and couldn't walk." "Where did he get that white powder from?" Detective Johnson asked. "From Daddy's room. He took small bags out of his desk drawer." Emma showed the size with her thin fingers. "It was in small bags like this." The detectives looked at each other. "Emma, can you show us that room?" "The room at the very back of the second floor." "Daddy's study," Emma pointed. "He always locks it, but it might be open today." "Because Daddy isn't here." Detective Johnson contacted headquarters on his radio. "Rush the application for a search warrant. We have a suspected murder." Early the next morning, a search team with a warrant arrived. Rachel and Emma were advised to temporarily evacuate to relatives' homes, but Rachel insisted on seeing everything through, and they decided to wait at a nearby hotel. At 10 a.m., Detective Johnson called. "There's something we'd like to discuss immediately. We'll come to the hotel." When the detective arrived, his expression was serious. "Mrs. Harrison, Emma's testimony appears to be correct. Large quantities of prescription drugs were found in Michael Harrison's study." Rachel's heart pounded violently. "What kind of drugs?" "Mainly powerful sleeping pills and tranquilizers. Amounts far exceeding normal prescriptions were stored," Detective Rodriguez explained. "He likely obtained them illegally by abusing his position as a pharmaceutical company sales representative." "That's not all," Detective Johnson continued in a heavy tone. "Jennifer Harrison's diary was found in a hidden safe." Rachel gasped. It was the first time she had heard the former wife's name. The diary's contents were shocking. In the later period of their marriage, Jennifer recorded in detail the psychological abuse from her husband. And in the last few months, she wrote about feeling abnormal drowsiness and consciousness disorders after meals. The detective took out several copies from a file. "Let me read some excerpts. Michael has been making my meals more often. After eating, I always become abnormally sleepy. My body feels heavy and I can't move. Emma looks at me with worry. This child might know something. If something happens to me, please protect Emma." Rachel couldn't stop crying. Jennifer understood what was happening to her. And until the end, she was worried about her daughter. "There was another important discovery," Detective Rodriguez continued. Correspondence with life insurance companies was found on Michael's computer. Jennifer's death benefit was $500,000. And there were records of significantly increasing the insurance amount just before marriage. So it was a premeditated crime? Rachel asked in a trembling voice. That possibility is high. Furthermore, it was discovered that he had taken out similar life insurance for you. Shortly after marriage, he had taken out high-value insurance with you as the beneficiary. Rachel's body shook with fear. She was supposed to meet the same fate. Without Emma, she might have unknowingly been given drugs and walked the same path as Jennifer. Without Emma's courageous testimony, there might have been a second victim. Detective Johnson gently patted Emma's head. Emma asked in a small voice, "The previous mama wasn't really sick?" "No, Emma. Your mother wasn't sick. Your father did bad things to your mother," Detective Rodriguez explained gently. "But because you told Rachel the truth, we were able to stop the bad things. Are you going to catch Daddy?" Emma's voice mixed fear and expectation. "Yes. Michael Harrison will be arrested on suspicion of murder. As soon as he returns from his business trip, we plan to take him into custody." At that moment, Rachel's cell phone rang. It was from Michael. Rachel looked at the detectives for instructions. "Answer normally. Pretend you don't know anything yet," Detective Johnson instructed. "Hello, Michael." Rachel tried to maintain composure. "Rachel, how is Emma? Is she eating?" Michael's voice was cold as usual. "Same as before. She's still not eating much," Rachel lied. "I see. I'll be back tomorrow night. Do something about it by then." After the call ended, Rachel sighed with relief. Michael didn't suspect anything. "He says he'll be back tomorrow night," Rachel reported. "Understood. We'll wait at the airport," Detective Johnson nodded. "Until then, please stay somewhere safe." That evening, local news reported Michael Harrison's arrest. The headline, "Pharmaceutical Company Sales Manager Arrested on Suspicion of Wife's Murder," appeared on screen. Rachel sat on the hotel bed with Emma, watching the news. Emma had a complex expression. "Emma, how do you feel?" Rachel asked gently. "I was scared of Daddy, but he was still family," Emma teared up. "But when I remember the previous mama, I think Daddy is a bad person." "Emma, you did nothing wrong," Rachel hugged Emma. "You were very brave and did the right thing. The previous mama would surely be proud of you too." "Does the new mama hate Emma now?" Emma asked anxiously. "Not at all," Rachel shook her head firmly. "You saved my life. And you revealed the truth about the previous mama too. I love you from the bottom of my heart, and I want to be with you forever." Emma showed a genuine smile for the first time. "Really? Really? We're a real family." That night, Emma slept soundly for the first time in a long while. Released from the secrets and fears she had carried for so long, she could finally sleep peacefully. Michael Harrison's trial attracted great attention locally. Charged with illegal drug acquisition by abusing his position at the pharmaceutical company, continuous drug administration to his former wife, and premeditated murder for insurance money, he continued to deny all charges. However, faced with Emma's testimony, Jennifer's diary, and physical evidence, the jury's verdict was clear. "We sentence defendant Michael Harrison to life imprisonment for first-degree murder." On the day of sentencing, Rachel sat in the gallery holding Emma's hand. Emma was nervous but bravely stood at the witness stand until the end, continuing to tell the truth. When the verdict was read, Emma sighed quietly. "Is it over now?" Emma looked up at Rachel. "Yes, it's over," Rachel smiled gently. "You don't have to be afraid anymore." During the trial process, Rachel had been proceeding with procedures to become Emma's legal guardian. Michael's parents had already passed away, and Jennifer's parents were elderly and unable to provide care. Most importantly, Emma herself strongly wanted to be with Rachel. "I want to be with Rachel, Mama," Emma repeatedly told the family court investigator. 6 months later, the formal adoption was completed. That day, Rachel and Emma made a small celebratory meal together. For the first time since Emma had begun refusing food, they enjoyed cooking together. "What would you like to make today?" Rachel asked, and Emma thought carefully. "I want to eat the real hamburgers that the previous mama made for me," Emma said. The delicious hamburgers she made before Daddy came. Rachel's heart warmed. Emma was recovering her mother's true memories. The happy memories from before she was dominated by fear. The hamburgers they made together weren't perfect. The shapes were a little uneven, and the vegetables were irregular. However, Emma opened her mouth wide and bit into it deliciously. "It's delicious." Emma's face lit up. Rachel Mama's hamburgers are the most delicious in the world. Hearing those words, Rachel almost cried. For months, she hadn't been able to hear Emma say something was delicious. But now, Emma was enjoying her meal while laughing from her heart. "Emma, your stomach doesn't hurt anymore?" Rachel asked just to be sure. "No, not at all," Emma shook her head. "Because Rachel Mama doesn't put bad things in. Rachel Mama is kind." That night, while putting Emma to bed, Rachel reflected on the past. When she married Michael, she thought it might be difficult to become Emma's mother because she couldn't have children. However, blood relations didn't matter. Emma had taught her that love and trust are what create a real family. "Rachel Mama," Emma murmured before falling asleep. "Thank you for protecting me." "I should thank you," Rachel kissed Emma's forehead. "If you hadn't told me the truth, I might have ended up like the previous mama. You saved me." "We protected each other," Emma smiled with satisfaction. Now, Emma is 8 years old. She goes to school energetically and has made many friends. Mealtime has become the most enjoyable time for both of them, and trying new recipes together has become their weekend tradition. Sometimes, Emma talks about her previous mother. "I think the previous mama is happy too," she says while looking up at the sky. Rachel believes that Jennifer would surely be glad to know her daughter is living happily. And most importantly, Emma has come to enjoy every meal. "Rachel Mama's food is delicious because it's full of love," has become Emma's favorite saying. Their new family is bound together not by blood relations, but by true love and trust. It's a strong bond that can overcome any difficulty. In the parking lot of the Grand Harbor, a long-established hotel in the Boston suburbs, Emily Chambers gripped the hand of her 5-year-old son Jacob tightly. The October afternoon sun warmly illuminated her black dress. Today was her sister Sophia's wedding day. "Mommy, is my tie okay?" Jacob asked, touching his chest with his small hand. "Perfect, Jacob. You look very handsome," Emily said, giving her son a gentle kiss on the cheek. Since losing her husband Michael in a car accident 3 years ago, Jacob had been her only family. Well, technically, her mother Margaret and sister Sophia, who would be welcoming them today, were also family, but in the 3 years since losing Michael, Emily had come to realize painfully that blood ties and heart connections weren't necessarily the same thing. As they stepped into the hotel lobby, the voices of relatives they hadn't seen in a long time echoed throughout. Aunt Dorothy was the first to spot Emily and came rushing over with exaggerated gestures. "Emily! It's been so long. My goodness, you've gotten so thin. Are you eating properly?" "Yes, I'm fine. You look well yourself." Emily smiled. Over the past 3 years, she had been working at a small accounting firm while raising her son, and had indeed lost weight. However, it wasn't to the point of harming her health, rather, she had developed a more toned figure. "This must be Jacob. The last time I saw him, he was still a baby, and now look how big he's gotten," Dorothy said, bending down to Jacob's eye level. "You look just like your father. Michael was a good man." Jacob shyly clung to his mother's leg. His memories of his father were vague, but his mother often told him about him. Michael had been an architect, a kind and responsible man. Thanks to the life insurance he had left behind, Emily was able to continue working while raising her son. As they entered the venue, a beautiful space decorated with white and pink flowers spread before them. The sophisticated decoration reflected Sophia's good taste. As Emily searched for their assigned seats, her mother Margaret appeared. "Emily, I'm so glad you came," Margaret said, embracing her daughter. She was a former elementary school teacher who, after retirement, doted on her grandson Jacob. However, from Emily's perspective, her mother's expressions of affection sometimes felt excessive. "Of course, Mom. It's Sophia's special day. Jacob, come to Grandma," Margaret said, lifting her grandson. "I have a special toy for you." She pulled a toy car from a small paper bag. It was a red sports car.
Can you imagine making $10,000 a month just from YouTube, all from home? That's exactly what I did with Reddit Stories. No face, no voice. Check the link in the description if you're curious.
Jacob's eyes lit up. "Thank you, Grandma." Emily smiled watching her son's delight, but at the same time felt conflicted. Her mother constantly showed excessive interest in Jacob and frequently interfered with detailed advice about his care. She knew it came from love, but sometimes it felt burdensome. "By the way, did you tell them about Jacob's shrimp allergy?" Emily asked for confirmation, and Margaret nodded. "Of course. I've already informed both the wedding planner and the head chef. A special children's menu has been prepared, so don't worry." Jacob began immediately running his new toy car across the table. He wasn't particularly interested in adult conversations and tended to immerse himself in his own imaginative world. This was the same powers of concentration he had inherited from his late father. Guests were steadily arriving at the venue. Sophia's friends, the groom's family, and relatives they hadn't seen in a long time. Emily continued making social conversation while constantly keeping an eye on her son. She wanted to make sure he didn't get bored and, more importantly, that he stayed safe. Since the accident 3 years ago, Emily thought she might have become overprotective. However, having experienced losing someone she loved in an instant, protecting her remaining son had become her top priority. Today was her sister's happy day. If they could just get through it peacefully without incident, that would be enough. Jacob ran his red toy car while occasionally looking up at his mother with a reassured expression. He too, in his young way, understood the sadness of losing his father. At 2 p.m., the wedding ceremony began. When the venue doors opened, first appeared the bride's father, Emily's stepfather, Robert. He was Margaret's remarriage partner and Sophia's biological father. Emily's relationship with him was good, but the fact that they weren't blood-related sometimes created a subtle distance. Then all eyes focused on one point. Sophia appeared in a pure white wedding dress with beauty that seemed to have stepped out of a painting. The dress, decorated with lace and beads, perfectly accentuated her slim figure. Sophia was the complete opposite of Emily. She was always a glamorous presence who drew everyone's attention. "Beautiful," Jacob whispered softly. Emily, like her son, was captivated by her sister's beauty. It wasn't jealousy, but pure admiration. Sophia had been beautiful since childhood, and she was also sociable. While Emily was introverted and focused on her studies, Sophia had the charm to attract people. David, the groom waiting at the altar, had tears in his eyes when he saw Sophia. At 35, he was a financier working at an investment company, tall with a trim build. He had met Sophia at a mutual friend's party a year ago, and their marriage had come after just 6 months of dating. Emily had initially worried about this sudden development, but seeing the loving way the two behaved together, she was beginning to think her concerns might have been unfounded. The minister's words echoed through the venue. "Beloved friends, thank you for gathering today for the wedding of David Harrison and Sophia Chambers." Emily was remembering her own wedding 3 years ago. Her ceremony with Michael had been smaller, a warm gathering of just family and close friends. In contrast, today's ceremony was a glamorous affair with over 100 invited guests. Neither was better than the other, but each reflected the couple's choice. Vows were exchanged and rings were traded. Sophia's voice trembled with emotion. "David, I'm truly happy to have met you. I'm grateful from the bottom of my heart that we can walk through life together from now on." David's response was also heartfelt. "Sophia, you've brought light into my life. No matter what difficulties arise, I promise to protect and continue loving you." Emily wiped the corners of her eyes with her handkerchief. Next to her, her mother Margaret was also crying. Jacob seemed to sense the solemn atmosphere of the ceremony and quietly placed his toy car on his lap, watching the altar with a serious expression. "Before everyone here, we declare that we will walk forward as husband and wife in a new life together," the minister's voice rang out, and warm applause erupted from the venue. Moving to the reception hall, they found even more glamorous decorations. Each table was beautifully arranged with white roses and pink gerberas, and the gentle light of candles enveloped the entire venue. Emily and Jacob were guided to the family table, where her mother Margaret, stepfather Robert, and other relatives were seated. Before the meal began, there was time for speeches. First, the groom's father stood up. "Our entire family is delighted that our son David has been able to marry such a beautiful woman. Sophia, please take good care of our son." Next, Robert took the microphone. "Since she was small, Sophia has been like sunshine. She always brightened everything around her and brought smiles to our family. Today, seeing her make a happy marriage, I'm truly proud as a father." Emily listened to her stepfather's words with mixed feelings. Robert's affection was genuine, but she herself was often treated as Margaret's daughter from her previous marriage. There was no malice, but a subtle distance always existed. In the greetings from the bride and groom, Sophia became so emotional that her voice choked up. "Thank you so much to everyone here today. I'm especially grateful to the family who has always supported me. Mom, Dad, and Emily." Sophia looked toward Emily and smiled. "Emily has always given me accurate advice when I was confused. Even after losing Michael, the way she continues to live strongly is my role model." Emily felt her chest grow warm at her sister's words. Their relationship had complex aspects, but at its foundation was deep affection. At that moment, Margaret placed her hand on Emily's shoulder. "Aren't you tired? You look a little pale." "I'm fine. Just a little sleep-deprived," Emily answered, but her mother's worried expression continued. "Have you been eating properly lately? Maybe you should go easy on the wine." Margaret's questions continued. "I'm really fine," Emily said, somewhat confused. She had indeed been busy with work lately and was a bit tired, but it wasn't anything serious. However, her mother's excessive worry was giving the impression that she was ill. Jacob showed no interest in the adults' conversation and quietly ran his red toy car across the table. Occasionally, when he heard laughter from children at other tables, he would look in that direction, but due to his shy tendencies, he didn't actively try to socialize. "Jacob, why don't you go play with the other children?" Margaret suggested, but Jacob shook his head. "I want to stay next to Mommy." Emily gently stroked her son's head. He too, from his experience of losing his father, felt anxious about being separated from his mother. It was a natural reaction. During the entertainment portion, Sophia's friends performed dances, and the venue was filled with cheerful laughter. The bride and groom also joined in the dancing, and the guests applauded. Emily also clapped along with her son while watching her sister's happy appearance. However, her mother Margaret continued to worry about Emily's condition. "Are you drinking enough water? Do you feel dizzy at all?" "Mom, there's really nothing to worry about," Emily answered, but she was beginning to wonder if there was some reason for her mother's almost abnormal concern. However, today was her sister's wedding day. She decided to put such thoughts aside for later. As evening approached, it was almost time for the main dish. Jacob seemed a little tired from the long ceremony and reception, but thanks to his toy car, he was in good spirits. Emily watched her son while wishing this peaceful time could continue forever. After 6 p.m., the soft light of dusk was streaming into the venue. Waiters were bustling around, preparing the main dishes. Each table was scheduled to receive roast beef, grilled chicken, and specially requested seafood plates. Emily was about to call a waiter to confirm what Jacob could eat. For Jacob's portion, please make sure it doesn't contain any shrimp. Understood. We have prepared a special children's menu, the young waiter answered politely. Jacob was still playing with his red toy car, but seemed to be getting a little bored after the long reception. He began a game of making the car run to the edge of the table and then sliding it down like a slide toward the floor. Jacob, be careful not to drop your car, Emily cautioned, but for a 5-year-old boy, it was an attractive game. Sure enough, the toy car flew off the table with momentum, spinning to a stop on the carpet. Jacob hastily lifted the tablecloth and crawled under the table. Jacob, come out from there, it's dangerous, Emily said, but her son was already searching for the toy car in the dark space under the table. Under the table was a cramped space filled with adults' feet and handbags. Jacob was crawling around looking for his red car when he discovered a small white piece of paper that had fallen near his grandmother Margaret's handbag. It was a folded memo paper. Jacob picked it up and, out of curiosity, tried to read the letters. He had recently learned to read simple words. The memo had a short sentence written in neat handwriting. Table 8, please add shrimp to the main dish. Don't worry about allergies. M. Jacob read the letters one by one. Table 8, shrimp. He knew their table number was 8. And the word, shrimp, filled him with a vague fear. It was a word he had heard many times from his mother. Jacob must never eat shrimp. It's very dangerous. In his 5-year-old way, Jacob understood that something was wrong. And he also understood that the M written at the end of the memo was his grandmother Margaret's initial. His small hands began to tremble. Why had his grandmother given instructions to add shrimp, which was dangerous for him? His young mind couldn't understand it, but he instinctively sensed danger. Jacob quickly returned to above the table and, clutching his red toy car, tugged at his mother's arm. Mommy, his voice was small and trembling. What's wrong, Jacob? Did you find your car? Emily noticed something was strange about her son's behavior. Mommy, let's go home. Right now, Jacob clung to his mother's arm. What's wrong? Emily was surprised by her son's unusual behavior. It's still dinner time. Let's wait a little longer. Jacob glanced toward his grandmother. Margaret was talking cheerfully with other guests and hadn't noticed her grandson's condition. However, for Jacob, that smile was no longer reassuring. Hey, Jacob. Why do you suddenly want to go home? Emily peered into her son's face. Jacob answered in a small voice. You didn't look under the table, did you? Under the table? Emily was puzzled. What happened? Her son, trembling, held out the white piece of paper he had been clutching. Emily took it, and the moment she read the contents, the blood drained from her face. Table 8, please add shrimp to the main dish. Don't worry about allergies. M. Emily's hands also began to shake. Her son's shrimp allergy was severe. If he consumed it, he would have difficulty breathing, and in the worst case, it could be life-threatening. And this instruction had clearly come from her mother Margaret. Why? Why would her mother give instructions that would endanger her beloved grandson's life? Various questions swirled in Emily's head. And she remembered how her mother had been abnormally worried about her physical condition all day long. As if she had been anticipating something happening. Mommy, I'm scared. Jacob buried his face in his mother's lap. Emily held her son while looking around. Her mother was still chatting with other guests. Her sister Sophia was talking happily with the groom. The other relatives also seemed to be having a good time. However, to Emily, it all looked fake. Just then, the waiters began bringing out the main dishes. Emily stood up and took her son's hand. "Jacob, let's get out of here right now." "Where are you going?" Margaret turned around. "Dinner has just started." Emily stared at her mother. What was hidden behind that kind expression? 3 years ago, when her husband Michael died, she had received a large life insurance payout. That insurance money was designated for her son Jacob as beneficiary, and she was to manage it as his guardian until he came of age. But if something happened to her, who would be the next guardian? A terrible possibility floated into Emily's mind. Her mother's abnormal worry, and the instruction that endangered her son's life. This wasn't a coincidence. This was something planned. "Mom," Emily said quietly. "We'll be leaving early." "Why?" "Dinner has just started. There's even dessert prepared that Jacob likes." Margaret showed a confused expression. However, to Emily, even that confusion seemed like acting. "I'm not feeling well," Emily answered briefly and gripped her son's hand. Jacob trusted his mother's decision and silently followed. He looked up at his grandmother Margaret, but could no longer feel affection there. Instead, there was an inexplicable fear. "Wait, Emily," Sophia stood up from her seat. "What's wrong?" "It's my wedding day." Emily looked at her sister. Did Sophia really know nothing, or was she an accomplice? Right now, she couldn't trust anyone in her family. "Sophia, congratulations. It was a wonderful wedding," Emily offered her hand. "Be happy." That handshake was a farewell. Emily took her son's hand and tried to leave the venue. At that moment, Grandmother Margaret came chasing after them. "Emily, wait." "What happened?" Emily turned around and showed her mother the memo she had been clutching. "Could you explain this?" Margaret's face turned pale. In that moment, Emily understood everything. This wasn't an accident. It was a planned crime against her beloved son's life. And the mastermind was none other than her own mother. Jacob gripped his mother's hand tightly and said quietly, "Mommy, let's go home." Emily picked up her son and began walking toward the venue exit. She could hear her mother and sister's voices behind her, but she didn't look back. When Emily turned toward the hotel lobby, she heard hurried footsteps chasing her from behind. Looking back, she saw her mother Margaret and sister Sophia running breathlessly. Sophia was holding up the hem of her wedding dress, desperately chasing her sister. "Emily, please, wait," Sophia's voice was mixed with tears. "What happened?" "My wedding is being ruined." Emily stopped and turned around while holding Jacob. Her son clung to his mother's neck and turned his face away from his grandmother and aunt. "Sophia, I'm sorry, but this isn't about your wedding." Emily's voice was calm, but deep anger lurked beneath it. "Ask Mom. Have her explain this memo." Emily held out the white piece of paper again. Sophia took it and read aloud. "Table 8, please add shrimp to the main dish. Don't worry about allergies. M." Sophia's face turned pale. This is about Jacob's shrimp allergy, right? But why would there be a memo like this? Emily stared at Margaret. "Please explain. Why did you give instructions that would endanger my son's life?" Margaret was pressing her trembling hands to her mouth. In that moment, the mask of the kind grandmother fell away from her expression. The face of a cornered woman was there. "Emily, you're misunderstanding," Margaret said in a shaking voice. "I love Jacob. Why would you think I'd do such a thing?" "Then what is this memo?" Emily raised her voice. "It's in your handwriting, isn't it? The reason you were abnormally worried about my physical condition all day was because you knew something was going to happen, wasn't it? Other guests in the lobby noticed the commotion and turned around. However, Emily no longer cared about the stares of others. Her son's safety was the top priority. "Mom, surely you didn't really?" Sophia looked at her mother with an expression of disbelief. At that moment, Margaret suddenly broke down crying. She fell to her knees on the floor and covered her face with both hands. I'm sorry." Emily and Sophia watched the scene in shock. Jacob made himself small in his mother's arms. "I'll tell you everything," Margaret said through her tears. "But not here, somewhere quiet." In a private room in the corner of the hotel lounge, Margaret opened her heavy mouth. Sophia had chosen to be present despite being in the middle of her wedding. She had told the groom David that there was a family emergency. "It's about Michael's life insurance money," Margaret began in a small voice. "Jacob is the beneficiary, and you're managing it as his guardian." Emily listened silently. That was correct. After her husband's death, she had been carefully managing those funds for her son's future. "If something happened to you, I would become the next guardian," Margaret continued. "And there are problems with Sophia's marriage that you don't know about." Sophia looked up. "Problems with my marriage? What are you talking about?" Margaret stared at Sophia. "David's investment company went bankrupt 3 months ago. He's carrying enormous debt." Sophia stood up. "That can't be true. David is a successful investor. I heard his company was doing well." "Sophia, sit down," Margaret's voice was exhausted. "David is on the verge of bankruptcy. And he came to me asking for help. As a condition of marriage, he demanded that I take over his debts." Emily was beginning to see the whole picture. "So if I died in an accident, you would become Jacob's guardian and could manage the insurance money. You would use that money to pay off David's debts and protect Sophia's marriage." I was cornered. Margaret held her head. "I wanted to protect Sophia's happiness. And David threatened me. He said if I couldn't pay back the debt, the marriage would be called off." Sophia collapsed into her chair. "My marriage was about money problems. David doesn't love me." "I don't know about that," Margaret answered. "But he was definitely in financial trouble. And he was targeting our family's assets." Emily held her son on her lap while thinking calmly. "So what was today's plan? After my son had an allergic reaction and was taken to the hospital, were you planning to do something to me too?" Margaret shook her head. "No, not that far. Just while Jacob was hospitalized, I was going to slip you sleeping pills and make it look like an accident." "You mean you were planning to kill me and make it look like an accident?" Emily's voice was cold as ice. I was confused. "I couldn't make normal judgments," Margaret continued crying. "I just wanted to protect my beloved daughter's happiness." Sophia stood up. "You were going to kill my sister and nephew for my sake. You thought that was my happiness. Sophia, you don't understand. You're being deceived by David. He's a man covered in debt who's targeting our assets. Then why didn't you tell me that from the beginning?" Sophia's voice shook with anger. "Why did you choose to kill my sister?" Emily stood up and took Jacob's hand. "That's enough. I don't need to hear any more." "Emily, wait," Sophia pleaded. "I didn't know anything. I really didn't know anything." "I understand that, Sophia," Emily looked at her sister. "But we're not family anymore. The moment Mom tried to kill us, everything ended." Margaret stood up. "Emily, please. I made a mistake. But Jacob is my grandson. Don't take him away from me. You tried to kill my son." Emily's voice was resolute. "Never come near us again." Emily pulled her son's hand and tried to leave the private room. At that moment, Sophia came chasing after them. "Emily, what should I do?" "The wedding. David." Emily turned around. That's for you to decide, Sophia. But one thing I can say is that there's no real happiness in a relationship with a man who marries for money. Emily left the hotel with her son. It was completely dark outside, but a light of determination shone in her heart. From this day forward, their new life would begin. In the car, Jacob said in a small voice, "Mommy, won't we see Grandma anymore?" "That's right, Jacob," Emily stroked her son's head. "But we have each other. That's enough." Jacob nodded as if he understood. 3 months later, in a small apartment in Portland, Oregon, Emily was greeting a new morning with her son Jacob. The autumn sunlight streaming through the window illuminated their modest but warm living room. It was a contrast to their luxurious life in Boston, but here there was peace more precious than anything. "Mommy, can we go to the park today?" Jacob asked while eating his breakfast cereal. "Of course," Emily answered with a smile. "Maybe you'll make some new friends." The decision to leave Boston hadn't been easy. However, Emily had no choice. After leaving the hotel that day, she had immediately contacted a lawyer and consulted with the police. Restraining orders had been issued against Margaret and Sophia, and she was legally protected from them as well. In the new city, Emily had started working at a small accounting firm. The salary was less than her job in Boston, but she was able to spend more time with Jacob. She continued to carefully manage the insurance money that her husband Michael had left for their son's future. On her desk lay 3 unopened letters. All were letters of apology from her mother Margaret. Emily had never opened them and intended to dispose of them. No matter how much she was apologized to in words, the fact that her son's life had been targeted wouldn't change. Jacob was adapting well to his new environment. He had made friends at the local kindergarten and seemed brighter than before. Sometimes he would ask about his grandmother, but Emily explained, "She lives far away, so we can't see her for a while." "Mommy, when can we visit Daddy's grave?" Jacob suddenly asked. Emily was momentarily at a loss for words. Michael's grave was in Boston, and they couldn't easily visit it. However, she wanted to cherish her son's feelings toward his father. "We'll definitely go someday. Daddy is happy that we're living healthily." A few days later, Emily found an article about Boston in the local newspaper. Sophia and David's marriage had broken down in just 2 months. According to the article, David's investment fraud had been discovered, and he was being sued by multiple investors. Right after the wedding, Sophia had learned the truth and immediately started divorce proceedings. Emily read the article with mixed feelings. Her anger toward her sister remained, but at the same time, she thought that perhaps she too had been a victim. However, she had no intention of making contact. Another article also reported that her mother Margaret was living alone. Neighbors said, "She's looked very lonely lately." Estranged from Sophia and unable to see her beloved grandson, she was probably feeling the weight of her choices. Emily folded the newspaper. The future with her son was more important than sympathy for the past. In the evening, while Jacob was playing with other children at the park, Emily was talking with a young mother sitting on the next bench. "Your son is very bright," the woman said. "He became friends with my daughter right away." "Thank you. Actually, we just moved here recently." "I see. If you ever need anything, please don't hesitate to ask. Everyone in this town is kind." Emily felt warmth. It was different from the glamorous social circles of Boston, but here there were genuine human relationships. That night, after putting Jacob to bed, Emily stood by the window looking up at the night sky. It was a quiet town where the stars could be seen clearly. "Michael, we're okay," she spoke to her late husband in her heart. "Jacob is growing up healthy too. True family isn't about blood ties, but about caring for each other." The next morning, Jacob said at the breakfast table, "Mommy, I'm happiest when I'm with you." Emily hugged her son. "Me too, Jacob. We're a small but very strong family." She had lost her wealthy life in Boston, but Emily didn't regret it. She had found real happiness that money couldn't buy, together with her son. And she was confident that no matter what difficulties lay ahead, the two of them could overcome them together. In the new town, a new life was beginning. Every day of building true family bonds while overcoming the pain of the past was there.